My guest at this time is the creator of the hit animated and live action franchise Corner Gas. It's Brent Butt. Brent, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with me.
Hello, happy to be here. Nice to talk with you.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm here in Chicago, so I'm in the States, right? And I'm just now, it's interesting the timing of all of this, really, Brent, because about 3 weeks ago, I actually found out about Corner Gas for like almost the first time. And it caught my eye.
Were you in a hyperbaric chamber? Were you
Yeah. I was like
just awoken like an alien pod? And you were like, what are the hot shows?
Yeah,
what are everybody watching right now? No, I get it. I mean, we took a while to really, make inroads into the States.
Oh,
and it's kind of fun for me because I'm seeing a lot of people are discovering the animated first and then realizing it's based on a live action series, and they're kind of having a reverse discovery, which is kind of cool.
That's what I'm going through right now, Brent. I found the animated series first, and then now finding about the live action series and everything like that. And that's why it's like crazy as I'm getting into this journey, I get to talk to you. I almost feel like a year from now I should be talking with you, but here we are.
And then you'll find out about my stand-up career before that, and then you'll find out about some of the things I did in high school, and it'll go all the back to.
Sure.
I'm like Benjamin Buttoning inside your mind.
Yeah.
Right now.
It's something like that. Yeah, 100%. I actually knew about the stand-up stuff because I had to, do my proper research into you, to get ready for this.
Hey, I wrote my first novel. I took this chance over the pandemic, being shut in. I wrote a novel. It's kind of a psychological thriller, but it's based on my experiences sort of as a traveling stand-up comic. But the main comic is from Chicago.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Little small world all coming together here. Chicago's a great city. I think if you gave us the option, I think Chicago would allow itself to become a part of Canada. I think if you gave us the vote, we might be there with you. I don't
know. You might be surprised. You go ask around. You might be surprised with that. Okay. But I want to get back to Chicago when all this craziness lifts, because we were only there one time. I got invited to throw the first pitch out at Wrigley Field. So that was my first foray to Chicago. Was a little dreamy, right? It was like, wow, this is the way to go to Chicago. Go throw out the first pitch at Wrigley Field. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we loved it. We spent 3 days there, and maybe 2 full days there. Okay. And it was definitely like my wife and I said, we got to get back here sometime.
Well, come on back, Brent. I'll buy you. Actually, come on back when everything's normal again, So anyway, I digress. This is fantastic opening banter here. We got Corner Gas to talk about,
Yeah. Let's do it.
You're here. I'm with WrestlingInc.com. We're this big pro wrestling news site. And this is like your pro wrestling episode.
It is.
Of Corner Gas here. So you're obviously a pro wrestling fan. Talk to me. Where did your fandom come from? When did it begin?
I grew up in northeast Saskatchewan, in a little farming town, and we had 2 channels of TV. And Saturday afternoons, we used to get Stampede Wrestling out of Calgary, Alberta. Stu Hart, the Hart family, Bret Hart, Owen Hart, all the Harts, Jim the Anvil Knight Hart, anybody with Hart, even a syllable in their name with Hart was there. And a lot of the... It was a great place to watch wrestling, because you saw a lot of guys coming through, big name guys coming through, because Stu Hart was a very well-respected name in the wrestling community. And so, you'd have Andre the Giant would come through, and you'd have Harley Race would come through and have some matches. But it was, it was mostly people that were kind of on their trajectory up or on the trajectory down. And so it was great. You got to see a lot of guys who went on to become, like the Junkyard Dog used to wrestle in Calgary as Big Daddy Ritter. It was kind of a pimp character. He had like this flashy suit and a big hat. And he had a longtime feud going with Jake the Snake Roberts, who was still Jake the Snake Roberts then.
Yeah.
And the British Bulldogs, when they were 2 skinny little kids, the Dynamite Kid was about 178 pounds or something.
Oh man. Wow. Yeah. These are all awesome names. And so are you keeping up with wrestling now, or is this all just like a passion?
Not so much. No, I've kind of I probably trailed off following somewhere in the, I think when Roddy Piper died, that was probably about, I don't know if they're directly related, but it was right around that time. To me, it was like, I just kind of got busier, and I had a lot of irons in the fire, and I just never, what it was? Here's what I'll tell you what it was. I think this, now that I've never really thought about it.
Sure.
But there was a window, and I don't know if it still holds true today, because like I said, I'm a little out of the loop. But for a while there, it seemed like there was far more talking than there was wrestling.
Yeah.
The soap opera aspect of it, which I always enjoyed,
Mm-hmm.
kind of started taking over. It became like an 80% soap opera, 20% matches kind of thing. And that's when it started to lose me. I like a little bit of the soap opera, I like a little bit of the backstory.
Yeah.
Why do they hate each other? Now let's get to the fighting. It seemed like they would never get to the fighting. Too much jibber jabber.
You really are from Stampede Wrestling territory. You sound like one of the Hart family members right now.
Oh,
You know that? And it's funny because so like about an hour ago, I actually interviewed Lance Storm. Okay. And
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So I had a little conversation about you before we even talked. So I have a little insight into what was going on with this episode. And one thing I'll let you know that Lance said, he thought that because you were probably a Stampede Wrestling kid, you were probably more excited to have Bret Hart on the show than him. Do you agree? Disagree? How do you feel?
Well, there's no question. I wouldn't say more excited. I was, when I first got to meet Lance Storm, I was very excited about it. I found out that he was a fan of the show, and then I was going to be doing a stand-up show not too far from where he was, and we talked on social media, and I invited him to the show, and he came, and I got to meet him there, and I was very excited about all that.
Yeah.
But there is something about, that 12, 13-year-old kid watching Stampede Wrestling and saying, well, there's Bret Hart,
Yeah.
His pre the Hitman days, before he was, before he was, I mean, back when he was about 180 pounds when I was watching him wrestle.
Yeah.
Sure. So yeah, it was exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. And Bret, this wasn't his first cartoon appearance, right? He was also on The Simpsons, right? Infamously here. I think you guys
never heard of it.
Never really?
Never heard of it. Is that a popular cartoon program?
Down here in the States, yeah, it's a very popular program.
Very popular.
It's the Corner Gas of America, is what it is.
Lucky.
I know. We're very fortunate down here. No, but yeah, it's like, that was the funny thing when I was watching Bret here, because in The Simpsons, I remember they didn't know who he was, and then later made him Bret Hart. And this time you knew it was Bret Hart, but you changed him. You made him somebody completely different.
Yeah, the Bad Mechanic is his name. Well, the way it kind of came about was when we were doing this storyline, we thought, I don't want to give away any spoilers for anybody, but we thought at some point, we should have one of Lance Storm plays a character named Lance Fury in the episode. And we thought we should have one of Lance Fury's, his arch nemesis, come back to fight him. Mm-hmm. And we created this heel character called the Bad Mechanic.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember which one of the writers in the room came up with that name. I loved it. The Bad Mechanic. And so I kind of sketched out what the character would look like. I put him in coveralls, and he had a wrench. But that was before we had the notion of, well, let's see if we can get Bret Hart to play this. Yeah. Because if we're going to Calgary to record Lance, Bret's in Calgary. So, so we reached out anyway. And then once he agreed to do it, then we designed the character to look more like Bret Hart. I mean, we kept him in the overalls.
Sure.
It's good for the Bad Mechanic.
That's how a mechanic dress,
Yeah.
But Lance also told me that another name he threw out there to possibly be his nemesis was Chris Jericho. Is that true? Like, and he said it fell apart because of like visas or something like that. Is that all correct? Yeah.
It has more to do with like performers unions and stuff, and who's a member of SAG versus ACTRA and all these kind of things. Smarter people than me know all that stuff, but there were legal reasons why that was going to be at least difficult, if not impossible.
Got it. Okay. Well, yeah, Bret Hart, pretty big get. So I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, Lance Storm, let's talk about Lance here, man, because I knew that Lance and Bret and Trish, who was also in the show, right? She had that role of the voice.
I want to have her on again now because we just used her voice. I want to have her on playing something else again. I'm going to approach her again to see if she'll do another character.
And you kind of, the voice changes. I don't want to spoil the episode, right? But you kind of change around the voice there throughout the thing too. I also clamoring for a little bit more Trish Stratus in that episode.
Yeah, I think we're going to make that happen.
Okay, good. All right, wonderful. Well, but Lance here, man. So like I knew Lance, Bret, and Trish were in this, and I guess assumed I thought Bret was going to be like the main character, and I was pleasantly surprised. You got Lance Storm here as Lance Fury. He's this former wrestler turned garden podcaster. First of all, how did the creation of this character come about? What is the story here with him?
Well, the first germ of the idea in the writing room was it'd be kind of fun if, for whatever reason, an ex-pro wrestler that Brent and Hank look up to came to town for some reason. And so then we had to contrive a reason, and we thought, well, what if he's come to town? Let's say he's quit wrestling and he's a podcaster now, and he's come to interview Emma about her plants. He's a garden podcaster. And then the notion that, Lance Storm has a podcast.
Right.
and he's a fan of the show. He's always been a champion of Corner Gas.
Yeah.
So then it became just a very natural, organic thing to say, let's make this, and I quickly sketched out this character looking like Lance Storm, being very serious, sourpuss, holding a microphone.
Yeah.
And and so then that's kind of how it came to be. It was that nugget of an idea first, and then as we talked it through, the notion of approaching Lance Storm just became very organic, natural thing to do.
Wow. Yeah. And so Lance, for wrestling fans, is, like you said, straight face, sourpuss. He's not the funny guy. Like, what was it like working with Lance and bringing out this side of him that I don't think a lot of wrestling fans would maybe expect, especially if you watch the episode, which I encourage people to do.
In real life, he's much less of a sourpuss. I hope he doesn't mind me telling the wrestling fans that he's not as much of a serious sourpuss in real life as he is when he was in the wrestling situation. I mean, he's not wacky. He's not zany. He's not honking your nose, sure. But he's got a really good sense of humor. I mean, he's a smart guy, generally speaking, smart people have a tendency to be funny people. That's been my experience. And he's very smart. He's a curious guy. He's well read. And so when I met him, I wasn't surprised to find out that he likes comedy very much and is actually a funny guy with a good sense of humor.
Were you surprised that he was so willing to go with the flow and accept this kind of crazy gardening bit? I mean, he was kind of, a little bit emasculating himself a little bit in certain parts of that, I guess.
I don't think so. I don't think he has those kind of hangups. I don't think Lance is like the type of guy that's like, and my father was the same way. My father was very manly, all the kind of, he was a strong guy, tough guy, high pain threshold. He worked as a lumberjack and a coal miner and everything, but he never had any hangups about this is masculine and this is feminine. Right.
Right.
And I remember hearing somebody say something that real men don't do dishes. And I remember chuckling to myself saying, yeah, go tell my dad that. He does the dishes every night with mom. That was kind of one of their bonding moments at night. After dinner, they'd do dishes and they'd talk. And I just kind of chuckled to myself, yeah, don't let my dad hear you say that, because you'll get choked out pretty quick. Yeah. And I think Lance is kind of the same way. He doesn't bother with those kind of masculine, feminine. I think he just thought it was a funny thing that the guy was a podcaster like himself, and he just kind of thought it was funny about the gardening because he himself doesn't really know anything about gardening, and here he was like an expert on all these plants.
Yeah, well, I'm sure, Lance has had a 30 year career at this point. I'm sure that in the wacky world of pro wrestling, he's had some things suggested to him that he's had to avoid. So
probably
that seems the way of it. Are there any other pro wrestlers, Canadian pro wrestlers, that you'd still like to welcome onto the show? Again, as I'm familiarizing myself with this universe, I know you've made other pro wrestling references in the past and things on Corner Gas.
Nothing's jumping out. We kind of don't look at it that way. We usually don't look at it and say, okay, that we want to do this we want to have this person as a cameo. It usually doesn't work that way. Okay. Normally we write the episodes, we come up with an idea, and then at some point, through the process of the writing, we'll come up with a character and go, this could be a good guest star or cameo role if we could get somebody to populate this character. So it's usually the other way around. So I don't have any other wrestlers on my radar right now. You don't want to go to the wrestling route too. You don't want to wear it down, make Corner Gas just a pure wrestling show. That'd be.
I don't know, man. My whole life is pro wrestling. This is all I talk about. So,
you want to go? You got to understand there are other things. You got to understand.
Are there though, Brent? I don't know. So,
absolutely.
One thing I wanted to ask you about too, I find it, something I thought was interesting as I'm doing my research into you. You had been credited as a barfly in a 1992 episode of Kids in the Hall, which seems kind of innocuous, but I'm a big comedy nerd. I absolutely love Kids in the Hall. How much of an influence did they have on your style and like you as a comedian?
Not much, really. I mean, I was a working stand-up before they ever had their show, before I knew who they were. Sure. I started doing stand-up in the late 80s, and I got to know them kind of on a bit of a personal level in Toronto. And I was one of the comics that they would always hire comedians to do warm-up before their studio tapings of their TV show. Sure. And so I was one of the guys that they hired to do that. And so I just got to know them, and they were really good in that, when they had bit parts, they would often just kind of throw it out to their friends,
Sure.
And so, the sketch you're talking about, the barfly sketch, it's a sketch called Stay Down, where Bruce McCullough is fighting the hugest. They actually cast the largest man in Canada. He was like 7'3" or 7'4" or something.
Okay.
They cast him to be the guy that Bruce McCullough wants to fight, and keeps fighting, keeps attacking him. And anyway, in the sketch, the big guy also has a couple of big buddies. Well, so Bruce McCullough was like, we'll get, he said to me, you want to play one of the guys, one of the big buddies? And I was like, yeah, sure. But I'm 5'9".
Okay.
The guy that I was sitting beside is 7'4". But the thing is, Bruce McCullough, to Bruce, if you're 5'9", 7'4", it's all the same thing to him, right? You're one of those giant guys because he's not the biggest guy in the world, Bruce McCullough. Sure. So he always looked at me as like I was about 245 pounds at the time. I was quite overweight. So I was a chunk. I was a hunk of a person for sure.
Okay, gotcha.
Broad shouldered and stuff like that. And he always looked at me as a big guy. So in his mind, he was just like, we'll get Brent to play that part. But man, standing beside that huge dude, it looked like he was babysitting me. I was trying my best to look tough. I remember I was crossing my arms like this. I was trying to make myself as big as I could be.
Yeah.
It didn't really work.
Well, and you've won so many awards, right? Stand-up career, like I said, just random Kids the Hall trivia there. For you, this is an American thing, right? Like, how different is our style of what is funny different from Canadian humor? Like, is there a huge difference between what makes Canadians laugh and what makes us laugh down here in the States?
I don't think so. I think we as Canadians like to think there is. We get because we're kind of like the dopey little brother that's been kicking around, and you guys are the big machine right down there. And we've always had this bit of an inferiority complex because we're sandwiched between the two biggest cultural shapers in the last millennium, right? We spring forth from the loins of the UK, from Great Britain, our mother country, right? We still have the Queen is still our head of state. A lot of people don't know that, but Queen Elizabeth II is Canada's queen.
Okay.
And we're a British colony. I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia, where I live here. There's very much that Commonwealth British thing behind us. And then right next door is the US, which is the most culturally, I don't even know what the word is, like they manipulated the culture of the world for the last, 80, 100 years, something like that.
Yeah.
So we're sandwiched in between these two big icons, and for a long time, floundering to get our identity, the little kid, And I've always said that to me, Canada feels like we're teenagers. We're just kind of at that point where we don't feel like we need to hang out with dad. We don't feel like we need to hang out with our big brother. We don't need their approval like we did for so long. I really feel like Canada's just starting to, it's like that 15-year-old kid that's like, no, we're just going to do our thing, So, but for all that time, I think Canadians, we want to say, oh, it's a Canadian sense of humor. Yeah. And for my money, I don't know what the hell that is, because John Candy had a very different sense of humor than Howie Mandel. I don't know what Canadian sense of humor is. It's all very different. I think individuals are more, we have more differences on an individual level than we do on any kind of national cultural level, I think.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Hey, well, Brent, I want to thank you so much for the time. I encourage everybody to go out, find Corner Gas, immerse yourself like I am now doing in this universe.
It's all on IMDb TV right now in the States.
Yeah, and
IMDb TV, the whole the live action series, the original series, the movie, and the first 2 seasons of animated. We're hoping to have the 3rd season a deal for that soon.
Okay, sweet, awesome. And is there anything else you want to plug, promote, put over here before we wrap up the interview today, Brent?
If you're curious as to when season 3 is going to be available in the States, feel free to follow me on Twitter or Instagram at Brent Butt, because I always shout out about the show. Any news about the show, I always shout out about. So.